Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video, I'm going to walk you through how we hire local and global talent. So I wish I was given this video before I started my journey with all the previous startups and LeadBird. And the reason why is because I've never worked a proper job. I've only worked at companies I've created. Some people think that is awesome. I think it's a major weakness because I've never seen leadership and structure and management. And so being able to idolize and conceptualize that from the scratch is extremely tough. And so this is for the people that have no idea on how to go about hiring and management and training and things of that sort. So let's start off with identifying who is your ideal candidate. So one thing I've learned is that you shouldn't be hiring for a role that you haven't fully built out. And this is because you do not know how to assess them by, and you probably don't have any training for them, and you don't understand what success for them looks like. And so you will keep running into this wall of, hey, they're not living up to my criteria or my dreams, and it's because you just don't have an idea of what that actually looks like. So do not hire someone for a role that you have not fully built out and you don't have actual metrics to assess them by. And then another thing you have to understand is that most employees are not system thinkers, right? They're not going to be able to build a high level system and things of that sort. And then, obviously there's the few that are going to be more of a senior leadership position that can, but I'm speaking mostly for global talent that are doing a lot of like the repetitive tasks that you don't want to do. They're usually not system thinkers. And so that doesn't mean they can't be successful. It just means that you need to have a system and they're going to excel at running that system. So that's one thing that I really keep in mind when hiring. You really need to have a solid foundation that they can sit in and really just own all the way through. And the other thing too is that, I see this huge trend of being able to just use recruiting agencies to hire talent. And I think recruiting agencies have their time in place, but typically you're overpaying for the candidate in themselves, and it's hit or miss. I've worked with, over 6 to 7 different recruiting agencies, and, I've found some amazing employees, but I've also found people that were just average. And so, I think if you understand how to use this framework and can go through this entire process, you're able to just do this in-house, save money, and really be able to vet people to your full extent. So that is one thing to kind of keep in mind when it comes to recruiting agencies. So the first thing you want to kind of sit back and realize when it comes to hiring someone is being able to map out the outcomes and attributes. And so this is something that's very important and a framework I learned recently. So you need to be able to say, like, what are the specific outcomes that I'm looking for in this candidate in 4 months from now? So for us, like if we're hiring a CSM, a customer success manager, like in 6 months, where do I want them to be? For us, like at LeadBird, we want them to be able to manage 50 clients at the bare minimum. We want them to be able to have a churn rate at X percentage. We want to make sure they're managing this amount of revenue. And like all these little outcomes and attributes that we need them to have, right? And the reason why you want to map this out is because you can then create questions to assess if they will actually be able to hit those outcomes, right? So if one of my outcomes is like they need to be able to manage 50 clients without feeling overwhelmed and be able to be like a great multitasker, right? How will I assess that in the interview? Well, it's simple. It's just asking them, hey, in your previous roles as account managers or a customer success manager, like how many clients were you managing at one given time, right? If they're saying, oh, I've only managed like 2 to 3 clients and it's very high touch, well, then I know that, hey, like they're probably not going to do as well as someone that's, worked at a SaaS company that has managed over 500 customers at a given time. Right. And so these are things that you want to be able to map out. And once you map that out, it makes it a lot easier to be able to do step 2, which is creating a job description and assessment. So you need to be able to create a careers page that is built into your CMS and can host all your applications and is very in depth. So if you look at our LeadBird one, you'll see that it looks very nice. It's built by Diego at Reflow, so shout out to Diego. And you'll see that our job description is very in-depth. And one of the things that I love hearing we'll hear pretty frequently on our interview calls is that I've never seen a job description this in-depth. So take this as a template, reuse it. You just got to really grab the headlines, right? So about your company, about your clients, like what is the role's mission, what makes them a fit, the role's responsibility. Like you can template this out, right? So just make sure you get that, and at the bare minimum have all of these details there, and it'll look very in depth. And it's funny, I've seen so many lead gen agencies just copy this exactly word from word, and I don't mind at all, but it's just funny to see that like this has actually taken like a really good pace. And the next thing that you need to have is an assessment for this specific role. Your assessment should test for critical thinking in their specific role. So like for us, our CSMs, they need to be able to manage clients, right? And so I want to be able to give them a situation of a client reaction and really ask them how they would respond. Our CSMs are writing copy for our clients, so I'm going to give them, details of a specific product or service and ask them to write a cold email for it. Similarly, for our inbox managers, they need to be critical thinkers and understand how they would respond to a certain email. And so I'm going to give them specific emails and see how they would respond. And so you need to create an assessment, and you need to use that as one of your grading blocks for the specific role. So that's step 2, creating a job description assessment. Now let's talk about step 3, attracting candidates. So obviously posting on the website is the main piece. If you have a personal brand, this is where it really comes into play. You're able to, just push everything and all your traffic towards it. So we'll frequently post on Twitter or LinkedIn and say, hey, we're hiring for this position. Please go to our careers page and apply. And we'll get a ton of submissions, and that's amazing to see. And then, there's other places you can go. Indeed, they have a great pay per application feature. It's really good. You're able to just pay. So you're able to post the application and then only pay for the applicants that you actually want to speak to. And so like it's pretty crazy. You post on there, you'll get like 200 to 400 applications within 24 hours. I would say probably like 70 to 80% of that is pretty junk, but you're able to just give it to a recruiter that you may hire to just be able to filter through that really quickly and just give them the criteria for that. The other thing I love to do is on Sales Nav, you can actually look at, like, let's say your biggest competitors. And so let me actually just pull up Sales Nav and show you like the filters that you can apply to find really good talent and be able to do outreach towards them. All right, so this is Sales Nav. Obviously, you guys know what Sales Nav looks like. But let's say like I want to look at my biggest competitor, and I would say one of my biggest competitors is Science. And I'm basically saying the past company is Science. So now these are all of Science's past employees. And I want to say that the past job title was Customer Success Manager. So now I'm finding a whole bunch of people that have been CSMs at Science. And let's say that like for this role specifically, I wanted to make sure I only hired out of the US, or let's just say North America, right? So now I have 32 really good candidates right here that I can actually go in and do the manual outreach and say, hey, saw you were a previous CSM at Science. We're actually hiring for one at our lead gen agency. Here's the application if you just want to check it out and if you'd be interested, right? And you'll get a lot of people replying to that. Obviously, if you're in the cold email space or lead gen space, you'll know how to automate that. So that's a really good way of just being able to do outbound. Other things I would recommend is basically going on Upwork and finding recruiters in all different regions and basically saying, hey, here's my application, send this to as many people as you can. Anybody that I hire, I'll give you a kickback of it. That's something that we do. So we have like a pretty good email chain of like 6 to 8 different recruiters across the world that we'll send our info to, and then they'll go post it in all of the local channels for us. And I'm sure you can go create like a huge job board or all these different types of job boards you could post it into. But this is basically all we do right now to just get a good amount of applications submitted. But I would say, since we do have the social traffic from LinkedIn and Twitter, we're able to drive most of our applications from that, and as well as with Indeed's pay per application. So yeah, just giving you ideas if you don't have that. And then let's talk about the interview process. So this is something that it was hard for me to conceptualize, and so I want to kind of break this down. So after we have created all the assets, job description, assessments, we've posted it on all our socials and Indeed. This is the flow that you want the applications to go through. So for us, we have our page, right? And at the very bottom, it says apply now. And so this is a general application. This is where we push everybody, no matter what the position is, through this type form. And what we've done in this type form is we've made it to be able to filter out candidates. And so let me show you what that means. Let me just fill this out. If you're editing this video, let's go ahead and edit this part out so it doesn't take forever. So what happens now is they can choose the roles that are open. So I'm gonna go ahead and put CSM, and then let's say like we basically ask a whole bunch of like generic questions, and this filters out a ton of candidates, right? For example, if they didn't put in their LinkedIn URL, so like if they just were too lazy to go put in their LinkedIn URL, it would go ahead and route them off this page. If they don't download Loom and send us a quick little video, because Loom is free for everyone, right? And if they don't send us a quick little video explaining why they think they'd be a good fit for this job, so let's just say they put none here, it would literally just route them off this page and say, hey, we don't think you're a great fit. Because like the general application, the whole entire goal isn't to make it super crazy or intense or anything like that. It's literally just to filter out anyone that we don't think would be a good fit. And for us, that means just like doing the bare minimum, giving us your resume, giving us a Loom video introduction, and giving us a link to your profile on LinkedIn. If you can't do those three things, like you're probably just not gonna be a good fit, because that just shows that you don't really care for this job as much as you think you do. And so like this will filter out almost 60% of applications that you're driving. And so this is really important. And as soon as they fill out the general application, if they get unqualified, they immediately get sent a rejection email. If they go through this application and we watch their Loom video and we think they're a really good fit, we're able to just click a button and have them sent an email like, hey, I'd love for you to schedule a call with our recruiter for the initial call. And so this is where we will do the initial call. And so initial calls, I try to not do it. Like if you're at a point within your company where you can hire to have someone manage these initial calls, I would recommend it. So if you have a chief of staff, I currently don't, but what I do is I go on Upwork. I found a recruiter that I could pay per hour, paying anywhere from like 15 to 25 per hour. I can't remember the exact rate. And what they do is they field applicants to do this initial call. And on the initial call, you want to make sure that you have like a pretty good framework that these recruiters can use. And so I think that's a very big piece. And so I'll kind of go through our framework for those initial calls. So we probably want to pause right here and come back for me to pull up the initial call framework. Which base is it in? Leadbird recruiting, interfaces. Actually, let me go into Trainial. This is a better place to pull it up. I'm going to pause it and I'll pull it up. All right, so this is our framework that our our recruiters use on the initial call. They basically just ask them 5 questions, and they ask them for every single job that they have on their resume. And that's why we need the resume to look at for when they initially apply. And we did not create this framework by any means. I actually found this on Twitter, and I found it to be very important and very impactful. So let's go through the 5 questions and identify like what we're looking for. So the first question, and literally what our recruiter does is pull up the resume and ask the same 5 questions for every single role that they've had previously. And the main goal here is to find outliers and find commonality. So the first question we like to ask, how did you find the job? What we're looking for when we ask that question is that, are they networking to find that job? Were they recruited by someone on their team? Were they poached by someone? Did they get recommended by the hiring manager? Things like that. That shows, that this person is actually very like sought after. And then I think that's a very good quality to have. We like to ask them what their biggest achievement was in that role. And this is really important because the A players will always give you specific things that they did for the company, right? If you were talking to an SDR, for example, if they were like, hey, I built a great team culture, I was able to have a great time with my colleagues, like that's not what I want to hear. I want to hear, yeah, I was able to drive over X amount of revenue in under this month. I hit my quota every single month. I was using cold calling and I was generating 10 appointments a day. Like I was doing this, and this. Like they're very specific and detailed. And, if you're finding an applicant that has had multiple jobs where they haven't really achieved much in any of those roles, like they're going to do the exact same thing at your spot. We like to ask them what has been their lowest point in that job. And the reason being is, we're just trying to see like self-reflection and awareness, seeing if like they can actually take responsibility if it was their issue, and just like, you don't want someone that you're hiring that is like a yes man, meaning like they have never had a low point in their job, and like they're always just saying yes, like I could do this, or like just always saying yes, but being like scared to have those difficult conversations, because they're just like, you're going to give them a task, they're going to say yes, I could take care of this. 3 weeks down the road, you're going to ask and follow up, hey, did you get this done? And it's not done. And you're able to suss these kind of things out when you ask them what has been their lowest point in their job. It also really reflects on their character. A candidate that is constantly speaking bad about their employers typically is not like someone that you want to have on your team, because they just never will take responsibility. And so that's something to that you can really suss out when you ask this question. Similarly, I think this is a very important one, because you get like a very honest answer when you ask them, hey, who's your manager at LeadBird? And if we reached out to him for a referral check or reference check, like what would they say about you, right? And you get a very honest answer, and you'll kind of just see like the consistency in narrative when you ask this across 5 different people or 5 different roles that they've had. Like if they say, hey, every manager says that I'm not the most hardworking person, like that, hey, I probably shouldn't hire this person. And so like questions like this are able to help suss people out. And then, like similarly, asking them what made them leave. I think this is a really big one. You want to find people that are saying, hey, I just wasn't growing fast enough at that company. I wanted a better role. I wanted to level up and learn more and things of that sort. And that's really important, right? And so those are like the 5 questions we ask for every single role. This may sound dumb when I said it, and I feel like I didn't do a great job explaining it, but like if you run through these 5 questions for every single role, you'll notice the commonalities and find like you'll be able to weed through a lot of applicants. And so I don't personally do those calls anymore. We have a recruiter. She'll handle them. I recommend that you do a couple, so you're able to record them and give it to your recruiter, so she has like a good rubric and baseline to kind of base it off of. But that's the initial call. And then after the initial call, if your recruiter is like, hey, I spoke to this person, they would be a good fit, let's go ahead and send them the assessment. So then you want to send them the assessment. The assessment should just be a type form. They fill it out. Your recruiter should have a rubric on how to grade it. So let me show you what that looks like. So this is like an assessment that we have for our inbox managers. We give our recruiter the grading criteria, and then like an ideal application that we got that passed, and then like basically what we're looking for in the answers. And so now they can review the assessments and say, hey, this person passed, or if this person did not pass. And then if they pass, it gets sent to me to actually do the leadership call. And this is the last and final call where I make the ultimate decision. And you want to, at minimum, have 5 to 10 of these leadership calls before you make a decision. Otherwise, you're just going to hire someone that may be decent, but like you could have found someone better, right? Like I think that's a general rule of thumb. Like you need to have a minimum of 5 to 10 calls before you speak to some people. If you look at like companies like Chick-fil-A, for example, before they hire anybody, they speak to a minimum of 20 people per role, no matter what the role is. And like that's insane. And that's why they're able to have that high level of service that, I hope to have one day at LeadBird, and we're on our path to have, and I know that you guys will want to have. And so that is the interview process. And then, like I mentioned, right, on that actual leadership call, all I'm asking them is questions to see if they will be able to have the outcomes that I aim to have for that role, and if they have the attributes that I aim to have for that role. That's all the leadership call is. And then, you're able to make the final decision. You want to be able to send an offer letter for every role, no matter what it is. This just shows professionalism. I think it's very important to have. I don't want anyone to join our company and think like, Dan, what am I actually getting into? Is this a legit company, or any of those kind of like functions? Because then they just don't work as hard, right? And they just come in with like bad perceptions and think it's okay to have mistakes. You want everything to seem top notch. You want to make everything seem like you're the next Apple of the world, or whatever it may be, right? So offer letters, obviously you want like just have job details, so start date, title, full-time status, all those things. Talk about the compensation, bonus structures, benefits and perks, responsibilities. And then I would always recommend having an NDA and non-compete, just so that they don't run off with your clients or try to create a competing agency or anything of that sort. So those are very important. And the next thing you need to do, and this is probably the most important part post onboarding or post like interviews is making sure that you onboard and manage people properly. And so this is something that I've always struggled with, and this is why I mentioned, right? Like, you need to have everything in that foundation built before you hire someone. So you should literally be able to map out the first 30 days a new hire should be able to have at your company, what they should be doing every day, assessments that they should be taking at the end of every week to make sure that they understand what they're doing, making sure that, you know, you're having daily stand-ups with them just for like 5 or 10 minutes to answer any questions that they have, and just keeping them engaged in the first 30 days. And then one thing I really love doing is creating a spreadsheet with just any type of FAQs or questions that they have, so that you can go through with them on stand-ups, or, you know, if it's a question that's a common theme and doesn't have an SOP for, it's like an idea for an SOP to go create. And I like to use Trainual, which is what you were seeing right before this. This is where we host all of our team's training. So you'll see like it's very in depth, and it goes like every single day for our CSMs and all the other positions. So, you know, it's what I like to use to host everything, and you could put assessments in there. So I think that's very important. And just remember, right, like, you are setting up your new hire to fail if you do not have a structured onboarding process for them. So I think it's very important to have. And after 30 days, if you are still not confident in their progress, like they're still making silly mistakes, they're still not conceptualizing and understanding things, truthfully, like I would probably let them go then and there before putting them on client accounts or really anything of that sort. Because if they're failing the assessments and they're still like not understanding everything, they're probably just not a good fit. And it sucks because you put a lot of time and effort into there, and, you know, you're doing the first 30-day onboarding and all the interview stuff, but that's why you want to hire a recruiter and be able to delegate all this out and then live with it. And so, yeah, that's something that I think is very important. Like, because like every A player that I have on my team and that I've ever hired, within 2 weeks, they've always shown that they're the A player, and that they're gonna understand everything, and that they're gonna actually crush it when it comes to the actual work. Right? It's the B players, the C players, the people that we shouldn't have hired that struggle day 20 plus, right? And so being able to nip that in the butt early on is very important. And you only, specifically if you're a service-based business that work with clients and customers, you only want to give them like autonomy and like work when you're confident in them. And it should be a steady progression, not an overload. And so what I mean by that is, like, on day one of like after training, you're not giving them 30, 40, 50 clients. You're giving them one client and then seeing how they do, and then giving them another one, and it's like a steady progression. And it's not just an overload at day one. I've done that a lot, and it really burns employees out and makes it to where like they just don't succeed, right? Because like now they're trying to multitask a million different things on day one without ever having like just like the routines built up. And so, you know, you want to be really cognizant of that. And then the next thing that is very important is that you want to make sure that you set up quarterly review calls. I think that's very important. At the bare minimum, you be doing that. You want to make sure that they're engaged. So make sure you set up on like at least a weekly or bi-weekly basis where you are reviewing their work on a recurring basis. And so this is our entire process on how to hire and manage people. You know, it's a pretty good general framework to use all the way across. And, you know, we've pretty much built a good automated system to run this all inside an Airtable, and built an interface for that our recruiter just manages entirely. But, you know, this is the framework that I recommend for everyone that's just starting out. I'm sure there's a million better ways to improve this and things that I still am learning as I grow in my entrepreneurial journey. But if you're just starting out, this is probably the most impactful and greatest thing I've learned in the last 6 months.